Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 62, End of Year Homework. After drinking with friends at Lupin, Dazai Osamu returned to Komae Nagito's home. Since he noticed Mori Ogai's subtle attitude towards Komae Nagito, Dazai Osamu has particularly liked to run to Komae Nagito's side. On one hand, he wanted to test Mori Ogai even more, and on the other hand, this place indeed suited his taste. Lifestyle habits aside, Komae Nagito, who had been living alone since childhood, was an excellent roommate. But what intrigued Dazai Osamu even more were the unexpected incidents that occurred every day. If he didn't often stick around Komae Nagito, he wouldn't have experienced them so profoundly. Simply put, it felt as if he were living in a movie every day. The types of incidents that would cause the comments to criticize, how could something so coincidental happen, it's entirely forced for plot development, but for Komae Nagito, such coincidences were everyday life. Dazai Osamu found it difficult not to have whimsical thoughts and spoke according to his own heart. Really looking forward to seeing what will happen tomorrow, it doesn't feel bad to always keep existing. The first time he said these words, it startled HarumachiMusic, who had come to settle accounts with him because his subordinates had been dragged into trouble. At that moment, HarumachiMusic had one hand resting on the doorframe, and after hearing those words, he forgot what he was going to say. He could only look with an incredulous gaze at Dazai Osamu, who was bowing his head and playing with his phone, not knowing to whom he was messaging with. Even being ignored, he didn't get angry. For the next 10 or so seconds, his lips moved, trying to say something but stopping 3 or 4 times, before finally remember what he was there for. When he returned after settling matters on behalf of his subordinates, HarumachiMusic's expression was indescribable. Even when he was later called to the boss's office by Mori Ogai, he tried his best to compose himself, but traces of it still lingered in his expression. Though HarumachiMusic is someone who takes his responsibilities seriously, focusing intently when listening to the mission details, and gradually, these traces fade away. Once the official matters were concluded, since everyone was quite familiar with each other, they began to chat casually. Mori Ogai glanced at the time and decisively invited HarumachiMusic to sit down and have a drink together, to which HarumachiMusic, very much accustomed to it, agreed without hesitation. Indeed, at least from HarumachiMusic's perspective, Mori Ogai knows how to be strict when the situation demands it and approachable when necessary, making him an excellent leader. Like sitting down to drink and chat like this, it has become a regular occurrence. Did something happen? Similarly, in the office of the boss, Ozaki Koyo, when HarumachiMusic had entered the office, she had sharply noticed something was up and only now spoke up. Your expression just now was quite peculiar. HarumachiMusic originally having forgotten about it, the reminder suddenly made him recall it, and his face immediately turned troubled. I just went to find Dazai because of that mission yesterday. Mori Ogai understood. It seemed that Dazai had once again tricked HarumachiMusic. However, such things were quite common. Was it really enough to make HarumachiMusic this agitated? After that, I heard that guy Dazai say something like, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, always existing isn't so bad, or something like that. Ozaki Koyo and Mori Ogai were both stunned, then looked at each other. Finishing his story, HarumachiMusic asked in frustration, are those rumors really true? The blue mackerel. Dazai, is he really in love? Although he himself wasn't interested in gossip, the amount of related gossip was overwhelming, so even if he didn't want to pay attention, it still found its way into his ears. HarumachiMusic had always treated those rumors with a carefree attitude, as if taking joy in others' misfortune, until yesterday. He almost even thought, ha ha ha, Dazai deserved it. Look at what kind of image you have in those rumors. But today, what had happened really left HarumachiMusic stunned. I wanted to laugh at it, but it turned out to be true. Ozaki Koyo found it amusing. You don't actually believe those rumors, do you? Who is Dazai Osamu, really? Those rumors might as well be about some other people who share the same name, right? I don't believe them either. HarumachiMusic sighed in relief. I just felt. Unless Dazai is completely out of his mind, there's no way he'd say something like that. I understand. Mori Ogai said in a serious tone, Dazai has indeed changed. Ozaki Koyo, impossible. The rumors can't be true. Mori Ogai reassured Ozaki Koyo, no one said the rumors are true, it's just that Dazai and Komaeda-kun's relationship is indeed a bit too close, beyond what I expected. At the very least, Mori Ogai had never thought that Dazai Osamu would go so far as to move out of the dormitory to the Komaeda household. Just as Mori Ogai was considering this matter, Nakahara Chiya brought it up, his tone filled with doubt. He even moved in. Just normal friends? When looking at each instances individually, in fact, are fine, but when Dazai Osamu suddenly became interested in existence, Nakahara Chiya, with his prejudice, looked at it from another angle and couldn't help but feel that this wasn't suitable, and that wasn't suitable either. Perhaps it's my fault. Mori Ogai admitted his mistake. I arranged Akutagawa-kun's room on the floor below his. In short, even though he admitted his mistake, Mori Ogai would never believe that Dazai Osamu could actually fall in love. He thought that for someone like Dazai Osamu, even making friends was already an extraordinary achievement. This had absolutely nothing to do with how utterly pathetic he looks, at his age, could only guard a lowly ability manifestation. He purely does not agree that Dazai Osamu would run off to fall in love. And the target is Komaeda Nagito. Even Natsume-sensei wouldn't agree. Mori Ogai, who considers himself to have a relatively thorough understanding of Dazai Osamu, insisted on his position. Ozaki Koyo thought for a moment. If it's Komaeda-kun, actually, there's really no issue, is there? Although she once had some experience with elopement with someone, she unexpectedly paid more attention to Dazai Osamu and Komaeda Nagito. Mainly because after reviewing Komaeda Nagito's information, she felt a sense of security, as if there was no risk of being implicated by Dazai Osamu's underworld connections. On the contrary, Dazai Osamu should be more careful. Why are you all believe this so quickly? This is obviously quite ridiculous. Mori Ogai expressed his disapproval. Elise, you think so too, right? Elise, sitting on the table, swinging her legs, said, Stupid Rin Taro, are you worried that Dazai might find a partner before you do? Mori Ogai. Ozaki Koyo silently plunged the knife in. Actually, it was just idle talk, not really believing it's true, but if Dazai has found someone. Yet you, this old man, are still single. Perhaps you'll have to remain single for life. Hearing the underlying meaning, Mori Ogai. Nakahara Chiya silently put on his hat, pulling down the brim to cover his expression, but soon realized that they were inside and, embarrassed, took it off again. Boss, Dazai must be hiding from Akutagawa. Nakahara Chiya awkwardly tried to comfort Mori Ogai. Besides, I just thought of something, knowing Dazai's personality, if he really found someone he loves, he'd absolutely flaunt it everywhere. There's no way he'd keep it so low-key. Mori Ogai came back to life. Chiya is absolutely right. Even Ozaki Koyo couldn't help but admit Nakahara Chiya's keen observation. Indeed. I was just worried about how to determine the outcome of the bet. Let's use Dazai-kun's declaration as the standard. The three unexpectedly reached a consensus on the matter of, if Dazai Osamu has a lover, he would definitely show off, and simultaneously felt relieved. Having friends indeed has its benefits, Ozaki Koyo remarked with emotion. He's even starting to look forward to the future. Nakahara Chiya took a sip of his drink and relaxedly said, if having friends could help correct his personality a bit, that would be even better. Ha ha ha. Mori Ogai laughed. To reach that level with friends is a bit difficult. But it's quite true that love can make people lose their minds. Elise retorted, so that's your excuse, saying you're staying single for the future of the Port Mafia? Elise, you're being too blunt. What do you mean by making excuses? I want to maintain my intelligence, it's the responsibility of a boss. While Mori Ogai and Elise were joking around, Ozaki Koyo elegantly leaned over and said to Nakahara Chiya, honestly, I'm a bit curious about how Dazai looks when he's losing his mind. Nakahara Chiya was silent for a few seconds before nodding firmly. So am I. Unfortunately, Dazai and Komaeda are probably just friends. Dazai-osamu didn't know what his colleagues and superiors were secretly saying about him. When he heard the port mafia gossip, even though he was the subject of it, he just listened as if it were a joke. It had no effect on him coming and going to Komaeda Nagito's house. By the time he returned home, it was already a bit late, but the light from Komaeda Nagito's side still seeped out from the crack in the door. Dazai-osamu hung his coat on the rack in the living room and then made his way towards Komaeda Nagito's room. As he walked past the sofa, Dazai-osamu's steps suddenly came to a halt. He bent down and picked up a few strands of light-colored hair from the dark fabric of the sofa. Severe shedding Dazai-osamu distinguished the hairs, muttered a few words before releasing them, letting them fall freely onto the carpet, eventually unable to tell them apart. Walking up to Komaeda Nagito's door, Dazai-osamu knocked, and after getting permission, opened the door and entered. Komaeda-kun, still not asleep today? As soon as he entered, Dazai-osamu saw Komaeda Nagito sitting at the desk, with paper and pen scattered across it, as if he were writing something. He blinked. Could it be the legendary summer homework? Sort of. Komaeda Nagito replied noncommittally, Dazai-kun, you have work tomorrow. Rest early. Komaeda Nagito was always straightforward with Dazai-osamu, answering questions without too much roundabout language. Such a vague response from him was rare, which immediately piqued Dazai's interest. Still writing it at this point, is it that difficult? Dazai-osamu walked over to the desk, bent over to take a look. An essay? Komaeda Nagito leaned back against the chair. Usually, he was full of energy, always smiling even on a hospital bed, but now his expression seemed a bit weary as he let out a muffled nasal sound. Komaeda-kun, isn't your literature grade pretty good? Dazai-osamu picked up the draft papers and flipped through them. Just write something random, isn't that enough? Komaeda Nagito took a few pieces of manuscript paper that were pressed down from one side of the drawer and handed them to Dazai-osamu. This is what I wrote earlier. Dazai-kun, do you think it could move sensei? Dazai-osamu looked at a few pages and fell into silence. The subject was familial love, but somehow, the passionate writing felt as though it had been awkwardly grafted from somewhere else. When compared to the plain plot, it seemed overly emotional. There was something a bit eerie about it. Komaeda Nagito held his forehead. Why not write an argumentative essay instead of a narrative? Dazai-osamu casually suggested. Komaeda-kun should be better at argumentative writing, right? No, it needs to be a narrative, Komaeda Nagito sighed, troubled. The originally manuscript he wanted to hand it to Natsume-sensei is a story of a young man risking everything to search for hope. He had even planned out how the protagonist would encounter those despair-filled events, but then Natsume-sensei unexpectedly said there was no need for hope. It didn't even have to be a novel. Komaeda Nagito finally understood the painful struggle of writing miscellaneous pieces. No wonder even someone as prolific as Oda Sakamoto found it hard to make the commitment to be a full-time writer. If he really wanted to write, it wasn't like he couldn't produce something. The very draft Dazai-osamu was reading now was his. The problem was that whenever he finished it and looked over it himself, he felt it wasn't worth showing even to Natsume-sensei. He couldn't be satisfied, so he could only rewrite it again. Dazai-osamu had a faint grasp of the situation. Leaning against the desk, he said, "Doesn't Komaeda-kun often encounter strange experiences? Could you possibly adapt those?" Komaeda Nagito sighed, "This isn't an animation. No sooner does something unusual happen than someone immediately comes forward to say what they've been through. Komaeda-kun, before you tried to commit suicide, didn't your classmates kill each other? Surely someone must have shared a bit of their own emotional journey, right? Couldn't that be used as a reference?" Komaeda Nagito was stunned. Here, under the black lamplight, as he tangled himself in fabricating a story, he suddenly realized that he could gather material right on the spot. "Thank you, Dazai-kun." Komaeda Nagito woke up. "I know how I should write it now." And so came the end of the year. Natsume Soseki finally received the assignment that Komaeda Nagito submitted. This novel, written from September to December, was a bit drawn out, but in every aspect Komaeda Nagito felt it was okay. He not only had Dazio Samu look over it but also got Oda Sakanosuke to help fix some word choices. The reason the writing process took so long, apart from Komaeda Nagito being inexperienced in writing a novel for the first time, was also because, if this old man remember correctly, the assigned theme was love, right? Natsume Soseki pinched his nose. What kind of idea was it to turn in a detective novel? For months, writing a not-too-bad detective novel, actually considered a very high efficiency, but this isn't about efficiency. Komaeda Nagito explained, there is love. The love of family ties. The male protagonist Kuzuryu almost killed someone for revenge for his sister. The bodyguard, who was also a childhood friend's love for the young master, chose to strike first on behalf of the young master. And also, during the trial, the deep feelings between the childhood friend and the male protagonist. Natsume Soseki almost wanted to look up to the sky and sigh. He wanted to see Komaeda Nagito's inner world through the words, but Komaeda Nagito just gave a god's eye perspective of the true story adaptation, the whole time never exposing his own thoughts. The detective novel isn't too bad, after all. Natsume Soseki listened as Komaeda Nagito kept babbling on about where love was portrayed in the story, feeling a bit conflicted. Honestly, without Komaeda Nagito's explanation, as a literary author, Natsume Soseki could see it himself. However, it was quite different from what he had envisioned the work to be like, and the gap was rather significant. Plus, making the theme about love seemed a bit forced, it felt like an overdone pairing. But he didn't want to dwell on this topic further, especially considering that Komaeda Nagito had been struggling with this for over half a year. In a way, it already explained a lot. Natsume Soseki put away the manuscript, lightly cleared his throat, consider it qualified. Komaeda Nagito revealed a delighted smile. As for writing detective novels, you could even consider trying to submit it. Thinking of the challenging literary world in Japan, Natsume Soseki actually felt a bit excited and wanted to ask if Komaeda Nagito wanted to try publishing it. But then he remembered their grand plan of fishing in a bigger pond, and Natsume Soseki calmed down. Although from the writing style and subject matter there was no apparent connection with crime and punishment, to be safe, it would be best for Komaeda Nagito not to have too much involvement with the literary world, just in case. By the way, are all the characters here your classmates from another world? Komaeda Nagito nodded. Although they died in the case, they are actually still alive in another world, because the place of death was in the digital world. Just like you. Komaeda Nagito smiled and said, just like me. Natsume Soseki nodded thoughtfully. After Komaeda Nagito returned to Japan from the United States, Natsume Soseki heard him say that his memories had returned to normal, but he did not ask much about the situation of the other world, knowing that it was entirely different from their own world. Komaeda Nagito's mental state actually seemed to improve noticeably after returning. The kind of crazed and neurotic aura around him seemed to weaken quite a bit. Simply put, he became more bright and sunny. Natsume Soseki thought that Komaeda Nagito would change like this, probably because of memories from another world, and he didn't want to ask too much about things from another world. So, at this moment, Natsume Soseki changed the topic. Over in Russia, many people are looking for Dostoevsky's other drafts. Komaeda Nagito coughed. Sensei, I really can't remember clearly, I can only recall the general plot. This old man isn't here to rush you for the manuscript. Natsume Soseki fell silent for a moment, then continued speaking. Japan is planning to recommend crime and punishment. The other side is quite patient, although they've made some subtle moves, they haven't officially taken the bait yet. When you discuss crime and punishment with others, make sure not to accidentally reveal the unwritten plot. Komaeda Nagito obediently nodded, I understand. Natsume Soseki looked at Komaeda Nagito, feeling there shouldn't be any issues, and, having finished the important matters, turned to something else. Tomorrow is the last day of the year, are you still celebrating alone? If Komaeda Nagito's answer was affirmative, he planned to invite Komaeda to spend the new year with him, as he, after all, was also alone. But Komai de Nagito replied, Dazai-kun invited me, Oda-san, and Sakaguchi-san to celebrate New Year's together. Natsume Soseki, pretty good. In theory, such a thing was possible. After all, Dazai Osamu had moved into the Komaida family residence, just short of officially joining. But the old man's heart was still a bit wounded, and the next evening he turned into a cat, pawing at the bar in Lupin, waiting for them to come. Well, in this way, he could also be considered to have spent New Year's Eve with his young disciple. The first to arrive was Oda Sakanosuke. He gave the owner behind the bar a small gift as a token of gratitude for taking care of them, then sat down, ordered a drink, and waited while sipping. Ordinary people on a day like this would be at home with their family, getting through it together. A bit more unfortunate would be working overtime at the company, spending it with colleagues. Even more unfortunate would be wandering on the streets. In short, on this night, the bar was empty, very quiet, and even the sound of ice clinking in the glass could be heard clearly from the corner of the room. Komaida Nagito came along with Dazai Osamu. He looked a bit cold, sitting down without taking off his coat. Seeing what Oda Sakanosuke was drinking, he asked, Oda-san, isn't it cold to drink this now? Oda Sakanosuke replied, it's still quite warm inside. Your coat seems a bit thin. Dazai Osamu responds for Komaida Nagito, Komaida-kun passed by a sprinkler on his way out today. It was supposed to be done watering, but as soon as he passed by, it automatically turned on, drenching Komaida-kun. Komaida Nagito said helplessly, although I ran away quickly, I still got wet, and since I was already close to the Port Mafia headquarters, it wasn't worth going back. So now I'm wearing Dazai-kun's trench coat from his office. While they were talking, Sakaguchi Ango interjected, Dazai now wants to slip away, he just need to send Komaida-kun to headquarters to find him. Better not use this trick. I think the boss will have something to say about it. Boss Mori won't have any objections since today is the annual meeting, not some urgent mission. Dazai Osamu spoke reasonably, boss. Get Komaida-kun a cup of warm milk. Same for me. Komaida Nagito felt a bit embarrassed. Dazai-kun. Is it for Komaida-kun to keep his hands warm? Dazai really does look out for people, huh? Sakaguchi Ango sighed. The calico cat, slowly strolling over from the end of the long table, approached Komaida Nagito, meowing. Komaida Nagito took off his gloves, picking up the calico cat and placing it on his lap, using the cat to warm his hands. Dazai Osamu, seeing the scene, smiled faintly. Komaida-kun, you really have good luck with cats, huh? This cat just refuses to let me touch it. Ah, it seems I'm unlucky even with people. Clearly no one came to drink with me, yet I still had to play host over there. Sakaguchi Ango couldn't help but complain, do you seriously not understand why people avoid you? There really isn't one. Komaida Nagito remarked, by the way, I didn't see Akutagawa-kun when I was there. He's knocked out after one drink. Dazai Osamu pouted. Let's not talk about him. What time is it now? Still 5 minutes left, I'm not late. Sakaguchi Ango checked his watch. By the way, Oda-saku, how are the kids? Oda Sakanosuke said, they're already asleep. They can't stay up this late. Right, otherwise, you wouldn't have come here. Sakaguchi Ango sighed, after I finish this drink, I'll head back to continue my overtime after midnight. Dazai Osamu smiled, Ango really is a corporate slave, last year you couldn't come because you were assigned a business trip, right? You sure are making this an excuse to cause me a lot of trouble. So I came this year, didn't I? Sakaguchi Ango adjusted his glasses. This year, there's also Komaida-kun, it feels much livelier right away. Komaida Nagito held a cat in one arm, while his other hand rested on the milk cup to keep it warm. Hearing his name mentioned, his eyes curved in a smile, I haven't celebrated the new year with anyone for a long time. To receive this invitation is truly an honor. Thank you, everyone. This kind of moment isn't really the time to say it's an honor. Dazai Osamu remarked nonchalantly, can't you just be honest for once and say that you're really happy? Natsume the cat also voiced agreement with a soft meow. Komaeda Nagito paused for a moment, then smiled helplessly. All right then. Thank you. I truly am happy to celebrate the new year with all of you. That's more like it. Dazio-samu raised his wine glass. Countdown, 3, 2, 1. To a new year, cheers. What interesting things will happen in the new year, I wonder. I really look forward to it. Chapter 62 End.
You